Welcome to Women in Paint. Whether your paint story is dripless or an old school mix of project management, business ownership, or modern estimation, the stories of women in paint are now part of the industry's rising success. We'll educate, encourage, and promote diversity and gender equality by giving you a behind-the-scenes look at our proven skills, business acumen, and driving force that propels anyone to find meaningful opportunities and a career path that challenges lives through paint. Now let's welcome your host, Michael Cheney.
All right, I am back with my guy, Chris Moore, Elite Business Advisors. Chris, thanks for joining me because today we're going to talk about, well, I guess it's something fun. We're going to talk about the $1 million to $1.22 million mark in the business.
Yes.
The reason I say it's kind of fun is because, you know, my goal for a long time was to get to that $1 million mark. And then I got there and I was like, what's the big deal? Now I've got more problems. I think maybe even more gray hair. But let's talk about that. So
yes,
let's jump in. You know what? And we've got new folks following us all the time. Why don't you give a little introduction? Tell us what Elite Business Advisors is and how you help folks like me figure out what the heck they're doing.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy having these conversations, especially with you. I enjoyed the last couple we did. So yeah, just a quick backstory, just to kind of give some context on where I'm going to come at with everything I'll share here today. So we exclusively coach painting companies here in the painting industry. We have clients that are at, brand new owner operator size all the way up to $3, $5, $7 million in revenue a year clients. So we kind of have advisors that handle all into that spectrum, but we've all ran and managed our own painting company. That's a big thing I always share with our team. Everybody's had the experience. We've shared the challenges that a lot of you guys tuning into this are probably going through or have gone through or will be going through, right? But my favorite thing is, and why I share that is we get to benchmark all of the different clients we've worked with over the years and are still currently working with to bring all that information here to share today to kind of help give some context to what you want to talk about. So to me, that's my favorite thing is we get to really just divulge a lot of that info down to you guys based on others' experiences, what's worked well, what hasn't.
Yeah. And I want to say just from a personal experience, I've had, business coaches all along the way because I mean, gosh, I can't imagine doing this without one.
Right.
But I've had some in the end. Well, I'll say this. I started out having coaches outside the industry.
Yep.
And while that was, of course, useful and I got some benefit from it, when I was able to find a good coach that has the industry experience, it's a world of difference. And like you said, you get to benchmark other companies that you're working with, which ultimately is just, so beneficial. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about the $1 million mark. Why is it the shiny thing that we think we need to get to? And then why do you think, like me, I got there and I was like, well, now what?
Disappointed almost, right? I don't know. There's something about, I think it's business in general. I don't even know that it's our industry necessarily, Michael. I think it's just business in general that there's some facade about a 7-figure company, right? And, it's interesting because it's all to scale too, right? Like it's, the industry in and of itself, but like every industry is different, right? Like the coaching industry, like, yeah, we have overhead, but we don't have nearly the overhead. Like our gross profit is much higher than what a painting company is, right? So for us to get to $1 million, it's actually even a lot more work than for a painting company to get to $1 million, right? So like, it's interesting that like throughout business in general, $1 million is like this number, this target that everybody, 7 figures, like we made it, right? We're $1 million company. And then obviously I think that just translates into the industry. And I think this is one thing, and this is what I love some of our conversations we've had even off air is people get there and then they're like, oh, this isn't that great, right? Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But I think it's because you don't understand why that's your goal, right? If your goal is to do $1 million just to say you did $1 million, you're going to be disappointed, right? Now, if your goal is $1 million because eventually you want to get to 2 million and have the people in place to remove yourself from the day to day, that's a different story, right? But if you're running to $1 million for no reason, and we see this quite frequently, truthfully, with no intentionality behind it. Like, I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to be stressed out and you're going to get there and you're going to be kind of like, oh, well, that was cool. I can say I did it, but like, now what am I going for?
Chris, I feel like you're talking about me right now.
I'm not talking about you,
but no, the truth is,
no,
the truth is you're absolutely right. And I, from personal experience, that is exactly what happened to me. I was trying to get that mark, but I really didn't know why or
Yeah.
what the big thing is, I don't think I really knew what I wanted my life to look like.
Yes.
And in my experience, the road to getting there was actually a really, I'm just going to say bad one. It was stressful. This is when I started getting all this back pain, and it really made me, my stress ended up showing up in my back to the point where I got to this crossroads of, do I actually want this business? Because my mental health and my physical health was actually suffering from it.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think when you start at a different place and you say, what is this business providing me? Right. We're not just for the hell of it. Right. What kind of life do I want? And then you understand that the business can help you create that. It's powerful. It gives you purpose. It gives you meaning. It took me a while to understand that. Thankfully, I got it. And now I operate from a different mentality.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what that looks like. You're in that $1 million to $1.5 to $2 million mark. What should we expect? What is happening at that time in the business? What are the things that we need to focus on and be aware of?
Yep. More money, more problems, Michael. No, I mean, I say that jokingly, there is some truth behind that, but I think as you're getting to that $1 million mark, and I love what you said, I have to share this before I go on, like, figure out what you want your life to look like, time freedom wise and money freedom wise, whatever that means to you. And then figure out how your business suits that, right? How does your business become the vehicle to allow that to happen, right? And so if going to $1 million to 1.5 to 2 million, right, is the goal, then I think the couple of things you should prepare for. Number one is you're going to be hiring a project manager and or an estimator somewhere in that journey, right? Yeah. If you're pushing $1 million, I don't remember exactly where we left off in that little bit less conversation. You're going to be hiring one or the other typically at that point, right? Most people, I would say 80% of the time, go production manager first. Owner continues doing the sales is just what we see. There's no right or wrong answer. It's based on what are your strengths and weaknesses and what's going to help you get, again, that time into our financial freedom you're shooting for, right? So you're going to start hiring one. And then if you're pushing that 1.2, 1.5 going towards 2, you're definitely going to be hiring both in that case, right? So I think the biggest thing I always like to share on this is, number one, if you want to be removed from the day-to-day operations of your business, where your business is no longer dependent upon you, you have to have a production manager, an estimator, and an office person. Right. Those are the 3 key things, because then you can go on vacation for 2 weeks. And in theory, if everybody's operating, production happens, money gets collected, projects get scheduled, and new sales continue to happen, right? Without one of those 3, you can't ever be completely removed without something hurting while you're gone for a couple of weeks, right?
That's a great point. So in that setup, what is the role of the business owner? Is the business owner filling one of those roles, or how? Kind of lay that out for me. And of course, I can tell you my experience, because I've messed all this up and I learned from it. And now I've got a great setup. But what does that look like for the business owner? Is there the capacity for them to run the business instead of work in it?
Yes, 100%. And I think in that role, and again, if you don't have all 3 of those positions, the business owner has to fill one of them, right? If you have all 3 of those positions, and this is the interesting part that I always love to share on this too, is you become a coach, you become a leader, right? You are I say true entrepreneur, not in the sense that those of us that are entrepreneurs aren't true entrepreneurs right now, but you aren't needed day to day, right? You shouldn't be needed day to day. And sometimes you almost have to stay out of the day to day because it just creates too much murkiness, right? If I'm hiring somebody to go sell $1 million, I might still supplement and hop on a couple of bids or go do a couple, large things or whatever. But like, I need to just empower them and let them do their thing. But what's interesting is you're now a sales manager.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people aren't prepared for when they hire the estimator and the project manager, is they're not used to being a coach. They were a doer. They were beginning some leadership as they had crew leads, right? And now all of a sudden you're leading people and coaching them at a level that you probably never have before. And that's where I think I see a lot of people, I don't want to say struggle, but I think that's a hard change to make for people, is like you as the business owner are the coach and the leader. And that's I think a big challenge.
It is. So you've talked about 2 things that I think we just want to highlight here. The first is hiring. This is where, it's one thing to hire some painters and get painters it's another thing when you're hiring at a different level, when you're hiring that estimator, right? So you've got to learn some hiring skills. And then the other piece of that, like you said, is the leadership piece of it. And, I guess it's just important to say that you have to be willing to keep learning, right? You have to be willing to, how do I become a better leader? How do I figure out how to hire people? And obviously there's lots of tools. There's people like you that can help with that. But those are two key, skill sets that you're right. You don't have to necessarily have when you were being the estimator, the project manager. It is different to lead at a different level. And, there's this phrase that I've kind of adopted, and it's, I'm leading my way out. And that's what I'm currently doing in my business is I'm leading my way out, and I'm trying to learn how to hire better and be a better leader so that I can put people in place that can do a way better job than me. Right. So if you think of it in that terms, you're leading your way out of a position, then it might give you a frame of mind for kind of the skills that you need to develop.
Yep. And I think a big part of this too is you can kind of accidentally get to $1 million without having to have a lot of stuff dialed in, if that makes sense. Right. But when you get beyond $1 million, that's where like the gaps are exposed, right? That's where the weaknesses, for lack of a better term, start to show when you're trying to push to that 1.5 mark and you are hiring the people and you may not have the systems in place. And so I think that's a big thing. If you're pushing that $1 million mark, or you're on the journey there, or you've recently got there, one, I mean, congrats, but two, make sure you've got everything really solidified internally with your systems, with your processes, with your hiring, with your handoffs, right? And all the different things, because if not, it's going to be a lot harder to go beyond that when you do start hiring people and stuff. So I don't want to say you can fake it to $1 million, but like you can get there. But when going from 1 to 2 is a whole different challenge if you don't have that foundation and some of those things in place.
You're absolutely right. And I'll zero in on something for you. And I know that you'll get this, is that when you get to $1 million, you can do that with word of mouth, right? You
100%.
can, and what I hear people doing, and I was probably one of these people at one point, is being almost so proud of, I'm getting here with word of mouth. And it's like, that is actually what you should be doing. Like that's great. That's working. Now to get to the next level, now you actually have to include some marketing. You have to be strategic. You have to think past that word of mouth, because that word of mouth referral is only going to get you so far. And to your point, that's where you've got to start thinking about these systems and these processes. And some of it you're doing on the fly, because you might not know what you need at that $2 million mark, because you've only gotten to $1 million, right? So you have to be, I think, fluid and be able to adapt to change and prepare your team for that. We talked about hiring, and when I bring on, another level, I remind them, hey, this is small business. We don't have it all figured out. Part of your job is going to be to create and develop this training program, right? What we don't have, those gaps that have been exposed, now become a team effort, a collaboration in developing the systems. So we've talked about the systems, the hiring, the people component. Let's talk about how you plan. So if you want to hit $1 million, 1.5, 2 million, you got to know how many leads you need, how many jobs that is. Open that up for us. What is some of that shift in mindset that you need to have when it comes to really even just your numbers?
Yeah. So again, I think at this point, like you really have to be tuned in with your numbers. And especially I think proactive planning is like a must at this point, right? Especially if you haven't hired a production manager, you haven't hired an estimator. What does it financially look like for you to bring that person on, right? Like, it's great to have the reactive job costing and analyzation. It's another thing to look ahead and say, hey, we did this with a lot of clients in December that were pushing that $1 million mark. Okay, what does it look like to bring on a production manager in March as things start picking up, right? What does that salary and that comp plan do to the bottom line, right? What are the additional expenses that come with hiring a production manager? Maybe it's a vehicle, which then means vehicle insurance, more gas. Okay. Right. So it's not just the salary. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but it might be more things depending on how you're running your business. Right. And so I think understanding that is huge. I love what you said earlier about, understanding like the lead side of things, right? So you need to have a really detailed plan. If we're going to do 1.2 or 1.5 million this year, how does that break down into how many leads that we need? Right. So taking it from, okay, this is our production goal, and we look at it per month, right? So we say, hey, you want to do 1.5 in 2025? Great. Let's break it down monthly to equal 1.5, make sure it's realistic and we can track it. And then, based on your average job size, based on your closing rate, right?
Yeah.
And then based on your lead, set rate, if that's what a lot of people call it, leads to estimates completed ratio, you can figure out how many leads we need, right? Yeah. And I think that's a big thing, especially as you're in this critical 1 to 1.5 range. Most of the times at 1.5, you're hiring that other estimator, right? But when you're in that 1 to 1.5 range, you start getting into this spot based on some of those factors of how many estimates do we have to do, right? And then if you're the owner in that estimator role, maybe you have your project manager, like how many estimates can you reasonably do as the owner of the company, but still keep running the business, right? And there's kind of a number somewhere between 40 and 60 that most owners like top out at, right?
Yeah.
And you think 40 a month and you go, well, that's only 10 a week. Well, yeah, but you're still running the rest of the business, right?
Yep.
You're doing your leadership team meeting, you're doing one-on-ones, you're having crew leader meetings, like you're doing a lot of the other stuff still. So, somewhere in the 40 to 60 range per month is like, in my opinion, the very most that I can justify an owner doing bids still at that level. But if you need 80, we're going to probably have to hire somebody, right? So you kind of can make that hiring decision based on what those numbers look like when you have the data that you've been tracking.
Yeah, so true. And then, if you even want to take it to the next level, which at some point you need to do this, but, if your close rate, maybe your close rate is in the 30s, 30, 35%, that part of what you can do eventually is be strategic and say, okay, look, we're only closing 30, 35%. If we can get that up to 40, 45%, then we need less leads, right?
Yes.
Now we're focused on our sales process, which is going to allow us to close more, have less leads, right? Do less estimates. And then if you want to take it a step further, which is what we're doing in my business now, we're saying, how can we increase our average job size? Because then we can do less jobs. Or we can say, we've increased our job size, we can do less jobs, or now let's figure out how to get more leads, and we add the other folks on the team to facilitate it. So I think that, that's kind of like, a piece of the puzzle that you can get to. And then, the other thing I would say when we're talking about leads and estimates in general is how quickly do you want to get to your customers? I kind of adopted the rule of 3 from Freshcoat, and the rule of 3, which I love, is you answer the phone in 3 rings. You get to the estimate in 3 days, which you think about during our peak season. You don't want customers waiting a week or two to get an estimate, right? And then the third piece of that puzzle is you complete the project within 3 weeks. And so we try and follow that rule of 3. And what that does for us is if we're booked out after, further than 3 days, well, we know the competition, who's probably less organized, are going to be booked out weeks. We're going to show up within 3 days, sometimes same day. We offer same day estimates also, which, by the way, with my data have a higher close rate, which is interesting. So anyway, I don't want to get us too off track, but there's this system that you can think about, and you can think about it in terms of your competition. So if we're getting out there in 3 days, we're answering the phone right away, and then we're completing the project in 3 weeks. My competition might not even be getting them on the schedule at that time, right? So when you zero in on these numbers and you understand what your lead flow needs to look like and how many estimates you need, then you can get a little more sophisticated and strategic with what you want your business to look like. If you want to be able to get to someone in 3 days, now you get to build a system around it. I'm a big nerd, so that stuff is actually kind of fun to me. But what else are you seeing? Is there anything I'm saying that really...
You're nailing it. Honestly, I'm going to hire you when you get out of your business. I think truthfully though, you really hit that. And one of my favorite things, again, with proactive planning is what we always call it, both financial, the sales plan, right? You then can identify levers that can be shifted that changes that, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you said. And those are the conversations, right? How do we up your close rate? Like, again, shocker, we have a spreadsheet for that to like play with the numbers, right? So we can see, okay, hey, if our close rate goes from 35% to 40%, oh, well, that's 7 less estimates we have to do every month, right?
Yeah.
If our average job size can go up $300 even, right? Then that shifts all of this, right? And so like, I love having that to where you can just change a couple key numbers and it can show you what that changes for you. Because most business owners, again, if they're not looking at this stuff, they're not seeing, oh, there's things we can do to influence this. They look at it and say, well, if I want to do 1.5 million, I have to do 560 estimates next year. And they just, okay, great, that's what we have to go do. No, there's actually things you can do to shift that, right? And if 560 is not feasible and you can only do 450, great. What do we need to change to get there? Right.
Well, you're right. So now if we shift that over to the production side of things.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever heard people say, well, I think I need to hire, how do I know when I should hire painters?
Yep.
How do I know? Well, I hate to say it, but it's in the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So you've now determined how many estimates you need, right? You've determined maybe where you want your close rate, what you want your average job size to be. Now the question then shifts over to production. It says, okay, how many jobs does production need to produce to hit the number, right? How many do they need to produce a week? How many do they need to produce a month? And when you can zero in on that, then you can start to understand how many painters you need, right?
Yep.
So talk about that a little bit, Chris. How does this trajectory of trying to get to that $1.52 million mark, how does that then affect production? And what does the focus of production need to be?
Yeah, no, that's good. So, I mean, I think everything we're talking about here, again, the proactive planning theme that I'll stick with here for a little bit is if you know that you need to produce $150,000 a month to have a profitable month with your production manager, your estimator, your overhead, everything, right? You now have weekly goals for production, right? There's always 4 weeks in a month, right? Always. So 150,000, I'm getting off my whole numbers here, 37.5 a week. If I did that right in my head on the fly here, 37.5 a week is now your production goal, right?
Exactly.
How many painters do you need to produce that much, right? The average painter in the industry is 9,000 to 10,000 a month, right? I've seen some that, some companies have a $12,000 a painter average per month. And I've seen some companies at like 7,000, right? So understand as a benchmark, if you look at what you're producing and how many people you have, we should be at least in that 9 to 10 range to stay on track with the industry benchmarks, right? So, I think at that point, we see a lot of people that have a hybrid model, right? They may have 9 in-house painters. I'm using this as just an example, right? They typically will produce their $1 million. And then they utilize subcontractors during some of their busy seasons, or maybe even year round in some cases, that supplements that other 500,000 of production, right? And I think that's a big thing, especially as you're getting into this 1 to 2 range. And I'm glad we did an entire episode just on this one, because what does that look like in your slow season? Right? I don't know how people are right now. It's been a pretty rough winter for some people. I know some people that have had some record months and whatnot, but I would say if I had to give you a blanket statement, it's been a relatively rougher winter than most people. And I think for most places, I know you guys there in Columbus too, the snow and weather was just terrible. And that psychologically affects everybody in a mental state to make decisions, even if it's not exterior painting, right? Everybody's trying to survive through 0 degree temps and 8 inches of snow on the ground, unless you're, used to that in Alaska. So what is your plan for that though, right? I think that's a big thing to think about. How are you going to weather through, pun intended, the winter months, bringing on the overhead positions? Are you going to 2 million with your in-house team and you're just prepared to maybe lay people off? Like, there's a lot of decisions that you have to really dial in and start figuring out at this level that maybe you didn't have to worry about quite as much beforehand.
Man, that's so on point, because the winter is usually stressful for all of us, right? When you're in a seasonal business like painting. But absolutely, what do you do if you've built out that team of employees? What do you do? And you know what? That was exactly why at No Drip Painting we went to a split sub employee model. Now, as we grow, we're probably going to be shifting back to the employee model more. But I do think one of the benefits of having that hybrid model is that in the winter, you're not taxed with all those extra people. And I know, listen, most folks in this industry are just like me. You want to keep your people busy. You stress if you don't have work for them. You feel bad. You start creating things for them to do. You have them paint your house. You have them paint your mother's house. These are all things I've done many times. Even when things don't need painted, right? But it does come down to the planning, and at some point, maybe when we get later in the year, Chris, we can even build out how do you even plan for the winter season.
I'd love to. I think one thing I just want to add on this real quick is understanding, okay, like this is our plan. This is what we're trying to achieve this year. How much money do you need in the bank by the end of October to make sure you can get through next winter, right? And that's a conversation that should start now as you're navigating this growth and this journey. Right now, I know some people are like, Chris, I'm just trying to make sure my bills get paid here in March. I get it, right? But at all levels, I would say to anybody listening to this, but especially in this I'd just say 1 million plus range, right? Even if you're beyond that, what cash cushion do we need to have to just be prepared that if, again, next winter is anything like this winter was for most people, like, how do we just make sure that March, we're still sitting okay next year, right? And that's something you have to start planning now, unfortunately.
You know what? I had a call with my coach today, who and love as well, Tara Riley. This is the exact conversation we had. I'm telling you. So we're already thinking, and she gave me, I'll share what she told me. And this is something I never even thought of, but it's a possibility. She has other folks that do this, but when we're cash flow heavy, June, July, August, in June, we've got extra cash, open up a 6-month CD that's going to mature in 6 months. Do the same thing in July, right? Take your extra cash it feels plentiful. You don't know what to do with it. You open up a 6-month CD, and then what does that allow? It allows when January rolls around, that CD has matured, and now you've got a little extra money that has been, gaining some interest, right? And so she laid out that strategy for me. It's one quite honestly, I never thought of, and I was like, man, that is right on point. Because the other thing that happens to us is that, we still have workflow probably October, November, maybe December, but you're going and you're racking up your paint account, right? You're racking up your Sherwin-Williams account. And then guess when that is due? January, February, when you're already slower and you're not getting the sales. And so, that is another thing to consider. And so we try to be a little bit more strategic, and we say, okay, listen, we're going to take that extra cash flow. We're going to pay more on our Sherwin account. So by the end of the year, we can maybe zero that account out. So in January, we're not hit with this high volume dollar amount that we're buying in November. So man, we can do a whole thing on planning for the fourth and first quarter.
I love it. I love that advice.
So to kind of tie this whole thing up, let's talk about, so we've got sales, we've got production. You've talked a lot about the planning, and I think that is an area where we can all do better. Give a little bit of structure around that. Like when we talk about planning, you and I are talking about the fourth quarter right now. How far in advance do you need to plan? And we are still kind of in the nitty gritty every day. How do you get your eyes up from what's in front of you to think about that next step? I'm sure you've got a spreadsheet for this, but kind of build it out. Like, what do you do? How do you plan for this?
Yep. So I think for me, again, the cash cushion conversation comes back to having a kind of a financial model or projections put together, right? We look at everything month by month, both in our job costing, reactive, and also proactive planning moving forward. And so, the conversation we're having with a lot of people right now is, again, what is that number we need to start targeting as best as we can predict right now at the end of October, right? By November 1 is the benchmark we use. Again, most businesses are busy in November. Obviously, the week of Thanksgiving always starts the snowball effect. But so we just say by November 1, what do we need to have, right? And then what is our plan to accumulate the cash from where we're at now to where we're trying to get to by then, right? And so, I think like simple spreadsheets is the biggest thing, right? We don't have complex things. Like, we believe in keeping spreadsheets simple, clean, easy to use, right? Like, even to the point where we color code the boxes that you put data into, and then like leave everything else, don't touch it, that's got formulas built into it, right? So I think just having that, and again, understanding, I always want to say, you should be planning, especially at this time, like 9 to 12 months ahead, right? When you get into July, you're really only worried about the next 6 to 9 months, right? Like I always say, we're right now planning through next March is what we're shooting for, right? And then when we get into October, Great. Now we got to execute on that plan, but we're already starting to think ahead about springtime, right? So I think at least minimum 6 months out.
Okay.
And again, sometimes, especially as you're getting through this time of year, like how do we say 9 to 12 months out? And then how are you just aware? I guess things are going to change, right? You might have to spend a little bit more money on marketing than what you expected, right? We always want to be very conservative in these projections and things that we're doing. But once you're getting north of $1 million, like tax planning and tax strategy is super important. We could do a whole nother episode on that, Mike. We'll just make a whole list of what we need to do. Tax planning, tax strategy, financial planning and forecasting, right? Like in all these things, it matters a lot more, right? Tracking your marketing statistics. If you're spending money on marketing, because you are correct, most businesses organically, repeat referral, little ad spend, 700,000 to $1 million. Beyond that, and again, it depends on how long you've been in business and some of that stuff too.
Sure.
Beyond that, you're going to have to typically start supplementing. So how do you even get micro in tracking what your ROI is on the stuff you're spending money on? What is your customer acquisition cost per source and overall in your business, right? Like there's a lot more things, again, that we have to start tracking and get a lot more dialed into. And it's okay because typically at this stage, you're not in the business every single day, right? You're not typically producing on job sites. And again, if you're hiring some of these roles we've discussed, you have more time to start focusing on these things we've talked about. And this is what your new job description is, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, listen, we are about to wrap up because we have hit our 30 minutes. Listen, you've got a lot of things going on.
Yes.
Talk about some of the events you have coming up. I know we're both going to be at the PCA Craftsman event.
Yes.
Tell us what's on your schedule in case we have the opportunity to catch you and see what you've got going on.
Yes. So we've got a handful of things we're in the process of finalizing with Sherwin-Williams events right now. If you're in the Charlotte area, Buffalo area, Detroit area, I can tell you those three, I will be there in the next 2 months, dates TBD. So check out our Instagram and Facebook page. We typically try to put that out there. PCA Craftsmanship. I'm so excited about this. This is going to be a great event coming up April 8th through the 10th. I've never been to Maryland before. I get to cross that off my list now. So I'm super excited to be there with you and a handful of others. And then one of my favorite ones, we'll talk more about this soon, Michael, is our Elite Business Retreat.
Yes.
Coming up July 23rd, 24th here in St. Louis. We currently, as of recording this, have 38 spots remaining. So we cap it at 70 people. We've had 42 people already purchase tickets for it, and we expect those to be sold out in the next 60 days. So that's kind of what's going on. A lot more to come. And then I know fall is going to be busy. We'll be at all of the PCA events in the fall too.
Yep. And you got some heavy hitters that always come to your event.
Yes.
Anybody presenting that we should know about now, or is it too early to tell?
No, I'm excited. And again, this is why you and I probably should talk later too, but we're excited to have Matt and Maggie Kuiper back, good friends down with Harpeth Painting. They've been a huge support of our retreat since day one. Chris Elliott from On It Paintings coming in this year. We've got Ryan and Danny Turry from Headwaters Painting up in Minnesota coming. We've got Christine Rich, who's in charge of strategy for Sherwin-Williams, coming to do a very unique talk this year, unlike anything she's ever put out for us before. So I'm really excited to have her. And we got a few other people. Jason Paris is confirmed to be there again this year as well. And we've got a couple other people that I'm excited to hopefully be able to announce soon. So,
man, it sounds like a killer event. All right, Chris. Well, thank you for joining me. We are out of here. We will see y'all next time right back here on the Women in Paint podcast.
Thank you for joining us on Women in Paint. We hope you feel compelled to follow your own path and use your compassion, strength, and skills to build a career in the paint industry. And if you like this episode as much as we did, give it a simple click to subscribe so we can invite you back to our next episode. And be sure to share it on all your socials. Remember, Women in Paint, stir up more than just a can of eggshell.